Gosh, I never thought I'd find myself in this mess. The crisp autumn air nipped at my cheeks as I fumbled with the closed sign on my boutique's door. Another day, another disappointment. The wedding season rush should have been my saving grace, but here I was, Angela Edwards, master tailor extraordinaire, watching my life's work unravel at the seams. I sighed, locking up shop and heading home. My fingers itched to create, to transform fabric into dreams, but lately, all I'd been doing was patching up holes in my own life. That night, I tossed and turned, my mind a tangled mess of unpaid bills and dwindling appointments. By dawn, I'd made up my mind. I needed to clear my head, to escape the suffocating walls of my failing business. On a whim, I threw some essentials into a backpack and headed for the hills. A weekend hiking trip was just what the doctor ordered, or so I thought. The trail was quiet, save for the crunch of leaves beneath my boots and the occasional birdsong. For the first time in months, I felt my shoulders relax. The worries of the boutique seemed distant, muffled by the whisper of wind through the trees. That's when I heard it, a sharp cry of pain, followed by a string of colorful curses that would make a sailor blush. I rounded a bend to find a young woman sprawled on the ground, clutching her ankle. "Hey there, you okay?" I called out, quickening my pace. She looked up, green eyes bright with unshed tears. "Oh, just peachy. Thought I'd take a break and become one with the forest floor." I couldn't help but chuckle at her sarcasm. "Mind if I take a look?" As I knelt beside her, I was struck by her beauty, all golden hair and sun-kissed skin. She introduced herself as Violet Washington, an aspiring dancer who'd decided to commune with nature on her day off. "Some communion," I quipped, gently probing her ankle. "Looks like a nasty sprain. We should get you to the ranger station." Violet groaned. "Great. There goes my big audition next week." I helped her to her feet, letting her lean on me as we hobbled down the trail. The ranger station was closed for lunch, so we settled on a nearby log to wait. "So, Angela," Violet said, testing out my name, "what brings a classy lady like you out to the wilderness?" I snorted. "Classy? Honey, I'm just a struggling seamstress trying to outrun her problems. Aren't we all?" She grinned, and I felt something flutter in my chest. We talked as we waited, sharing bits and pieces of our lives. Violet's passion for dance was infectious, her eyes lighting up as she described her latest routine. I found myself opening up about the boutique, surprised by how easy it was to confide in this vibrant stranger. As the sun began to dip lower in the sky, painting the trees in hues of gold and crimson, I realized I'd completely lost track of time. Violet's company had been a balm to my frayed nerves, her laughter chasing away the shadows that had been dogging my steps for months. When the ranger finally returned, Violet turned to me with a mischievous glint in her eye. "You know, Angela, I think the universe might have done me a favor with this sprain. Otherwise, I might never have met you." I felt a blush creep up my neck. "Well, let's not thank the universe just yet. You've still got a bum ankle, and I've still got a failing business." She laughed, a sound that seemed to brighten the very air around us. "True, but at least now we're not facing our problems alone, right?" As we parted ways at the trailhead, exchanging numbers with promises to stay in touch, I couldn't shake the feeling that this chance encounter was the beginning of something significant. Little did I know just how right I was, or how deeply Violet Washington would stitch herself into the fabric of my life. A week after our hiking adventure, the little bell above my boutique door chimed. I looked up from my sewing machine, and there she was, Violet Washington, strutting into my shop like she owned the place. "Well, well, if it isn't my knight in shining hiking boots," she grinned, her green eyes twinkling with mischief. I couldn't help but smile back. "Fancy seeing you here, Twinkle Toes. How's the ankle?" She did a little twirl, barely wincing. "Good as new, thanks to you. Now, I need your expertise for something a bit more glamorous." As I helped Violet into a fitting room, she explained her predicament. Her best friend's wedding was coming up and she needed the perfect dress. But there was a catch. Her ex-boyfriend would be there, and she couldn't bear the thought of showing up alone. "So, I had this crazy idea," Violet said, peeking out from behind the curtain. "What if you came with me, as my date?" I nearly pricked myself with a pin. "Excuse me?" She stepped out in a stunning emerald gown that made her eyes pop. "Hear me out, Angela. It's just for the weekend. We pretend to be a couple, you get to showcase your amazing designs, and I get to avoid awkward conversations with my ex. Win-win, right?" I raised an eyebrow, trying to ignore how breathtaking she looked. And what makes you think I'd agree to this harebrained scheme? Violet's face softened. Because you're kind, and you understand what it's like to need a little help sometimes. Plus, she added with a wink, I've seen how you look at me. Heat rushed to my cheeks. Damn, was I that transparent? I don't know, Violet, it's been a long time since I've been to a wedding, let alone pretended to be someone's girlfriend. She took my hands in hers, her touch sending a jolt through my body. Please, Angela, I promise it'll be fun, and who knows? Maybe it'll be good for your business too. I sighed, knowing I was fighting a losing battle. Fine, but we need to set some ground rules. And just like that, I found myself agreeing to be the fake girlfriend of a woman nearly half my age. What could possibly go wrong? Over the next few weeks, Violet became a fixture at my boutique. We spent hours after closing going over our relationship history, practicing how we'd act as a couple, and even creating a photo album of fake memories. So, how did we meet? Violet asked one evening, sprawled across my work table. I smirked, pinning a hem on her bridesmaid dress. Well, there was this clumsy dancer who nearly broke her ankle in the woods. She threw a scrap of fabric at me, laughing. Hey, I was not clumsy. I was gracefully challenged that day. As we worked on her backstory, I couldn't help but notice how easy it was to be around Violet. Her energy was infectious, her laughter filling the empty spaces in my life I hadn't even realized were there. One night, as I was locking up, Violet surprised me by grabbing my hand and pulling me into a slow dance. What are you doing? I asked, my heart racing at her proximity. She smiled softly. Practice. We need to look convincing on the dance floor, don't we? As we swayed to the imaginary music, I found myself getting lost in her eyes. For a moment, I forgot this was all pretend. I leaned in, my lips barely a breath away from hers. The sound of a car horn outside shattered the moment. We jumped apart, both of us flushed and flustered. I should go, Violet stammered, gathering her things. See you tomorrow? I nodded, not trusting my voice. As I watched her leave, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was in way over my head. The days flew by, and soon it was time for the wedding weekend. As we drove to the venue, I felt a mix of excitement and dread. What if someone saw through our charade? What if I made a fool of myself? Violet must have sensed my unease because she reached over and squeezed my hand. Hey, relax, we've got this. And for a moment, looking into her reassuring smile, I believed her. But as we pulled up to the Grand Hotel where the wedding was being held, reality came crashing back. Ready, partner? Violet asked, her eyes sparkling with anticipation. I took a deep breath, pushing aside my doubts. As I'll ever be. Hand in hand, we walked into the hotel lobby, our fake relationship about to be put to the ultimate test. Little did I know, the line between pretend and reality was about to blur in ways I never could have imagined. The wedding weekend was in full swing, and I found myself swept up in a whirlwind of champagne toasts and stolen glances. Violet and I played our parts to perfection, fooling everyone with our carefully crafted story of whirlwind romance. But as the days went on, I began to wonder who exactly we were fooling. It all started innocently enough. After the rehearsal dinner, Violet convinced me to help her practice her dance routine for an upcoming audition. Come on, Angela, she pleaded, her green eyes sparkling in the dim light of my hotel room. I need your expert opinion. I sighed, unable to resist her charm. Fine, but don't blame me if I step on your toes. I'm more used to pinning hems than pirouettes. Violet's face lit up with that infectious smile of hers. Trust me, you'll be great. She pulled me to my feet, and suddenly we were chest to chest, her hand on my waist, mine on her shoulder. The room seemed to shrink, the air growing thick with unspoken tension. Okay, Violet breathed, her voice barely above a whisper. Just follow my lead. As we moved together, I found myself getting lost in the rhythm, in the feel of Violet's body against mine. She guided me through the steps, her touch gentle yet firm. I couldn't help but marvel at her grace, the way she seemed to float across the floor. See? She murmured, her breath warm against my ear. You're a natural. I laughed softly, trying to ignore the way my heart raced at her proximity. I think you're just a good teacher. We spun and swayed, lost in our own little world. As the imaginary music reached its crescendo, Violet dipped me low, her face mere inches from mine. Time seemed to stand still as we gazed into each other's eyes, both breathing heavily. For a moment, I thought she might kiss me. I found myself hoping she would. But then, like a spell breaking, she pulled me back up, a faint blush coloring her cheeks. "That was nice," she said, not quite meeting my eyes. I nodded, trying to steady my racing heart. "Yeah, it was." After that night, something shifted between us. Our touches lingered a little longer. Our gazes held a little deeper. We no longer had to pretend to be a couple. It felt real, and that terrified me. The next day, as we helped with last-minute wedding preparations, I found myself watching Violet from across the room. She was laughing with the bride, her golden hair catching the sunlight. God, she was beautiful, and young, and full of dreams and potential. What the hell was I doing? "Earth to Angela." A voice broke through my reverie. I turned to find Sarah, the bride, smiling knowingly at me. "You've got it bad, huh?" I felt my cheeks heat up. "I don't know what you're talking about." Sarah laughed, nudging me playfully. "Oh, come on. I've seen the way you look at Violet. It's the same way I look at my fiancé." I opened my mouth to protest, but the words died on my lips. Who was I kidding? I was falling for Violet hard and fast. As the day of the wedding arrived, I found myself in a whirlwind of emotions. Watching Violet walk down the aisle as a bridesmaid, looking radiant in the dress we'd worked on together, my heart swelled with pride and something dangerously close to love. During the reception, we danced and laughed, playing our roles to perfection. But every touch, every shared smile, felt more real than anything I'd experienced in years. As the night wore on, Violet pulled me away from the crowd, leading me out to a secluded garden. The air was heavy with the scent of roses and the distant strains of music from the reception. "Angela," she said softly, her eyes shining in the moonlight, "I need to tell you something." My heart pounded in my chest. "What is it?" She took a deep breath, stepping closer. I think I'm falling for you, for real." Time seemed to stop. I stared at her, searching her face for any sign of deception. But all I saw was vulnerability and hope. Before I could talk myself out of it, I closed the distance between us, capturing her lips in a kiss. It was soft at first, tentative, but quickly grew in intensity. Violet's arms wound around my neck as she pressed herself closer, deepening the kiss. When we finally broke apart, both breathless, I rested my forehead against hers. "I think I'm falling for you too," I whispered. Violet's smile was radiant. "So, what do we do now?" I laughed softly, feeling lighter than I had in years. "I have no idea, but I'm willing to figure it out if you are." As we made our way back to the reception, hand in hand, I knew that our pretend relationship had become something very real. And for the first time in a long time, I was excited about what the future might hold. That night, as we lay tangled in the sheets of my hotel room, sharing whispered confessions and gentle caresses, I realized that sometimes the best things in life come when you least expect them. And sometimes, just sometimes, fairy tales can come true, even for a jaded seamstress and a dreamer half her age. The morning after the wedding, I woke up with Violet curled against me, her golden hair splayed across my chest. For a moment I just watched her sleep, marveling at how quickly my life had changed. But as the initial euphoria began to fade, doubt crept in like an unwelcome guest. What was I thinking? This beautiful, vibrant woman was half my age. She had her whole life ahead of her, a promising dance career on the horizon. And me? I was just a struggling seamstress with more wrinkles than savings. I carefully extricated myself from Violet's embrace, trying not to wake her as I slipped out of bed. I needed some air, some space to think. As I stood on the balcony, watching the sun rise over Huntington Beach, I heard the sliding door open behind me. "Hey," Violet's sleep husky voice sent a shiver down my spine. "Everything okay?" I turned to face her, my heart clenching at the sight of her wrapped in nothing but a hotel robe. "Just thinking," I replied, trying to keep my voice light. She patted over to me, wrapping her arms around my waist. "Penny for your thoughts?" I sighed, unable to resist leaning into her warmth. "Violet, what are we doing this weekend? It's been amazing, but it's not real life." She stiffened in my arms. "What do you mean?" I said, pulling away slightly to look her in the eye. "You're young, talented, with your whole life ahead of you. And I'm not." Violet's eyes flashed with hurt and anger. Is that what you think? That I'm some naive kid who doesn't know what she wants? No, that's not. Because let me tell you something, Angela Edwards, she continued, poking me in the chest. I may be younger than you, but I know my own heart, and right now, it wants you. I felt my resolve weakening. But your career. My career is important to me, she interrupted, but so are you. Why can't I have both? Before I could respond, a knock at the door interrupted us. Violet went to answer it, leaving me to my swirling thoughts. It was Sarah, the bride, looking far too chipper for someone who'd just gotten married the night before. Hey lovebirds, she chirped. We're all heading down for brunch. You coming? Violet glanced at me, a challenge in her eyes. Wouldn't miss it, she said. As we made our way down to the hotel restaurant, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were walking a tightrope. The other wedding guests greeted us with knowing smiles and playful jabs about our whirlwind romance. If only they knew. Brunch was a minefield of awkward questions and pointed looks. Violet's ex-boyfriend, the reason for our whole charade, kept shooting us suspicious glances from across the room. So, Angela, Sarah's mother cornered me by the mimosa bar. How exactly did you and Violet meet? It must have been quite the story. I plastered on my best fake smile, reciting the tale we'd concocted. Oh, you know, just a chance encounter on a hiking trail. Love finds you when you least expect it. As I spun our fabricated love story, I caught Violet's eye across the room. She was deep in conversation with a tall, distinguished-looking man I didn't recognize. The way she gestured animatedly, her face lit up with excitement, made my stomach churn with an unfamiliar emotion. Jealousy. Gosh, I was jealous. I excused myself from Sarah's mother and made my way over to Violet, sliding an arm possessively around her waist. Hey sweetie, I said, my voice sickly sweet. Who's your friend? Violet beamed at me, seemingly oblivious to my discomfort. Angela, this is Marcus Blackwood. He's a talent scout for the American Ballet Theater. My heart sank. Of course he was. Marcus extended his hand, his smile professionally polite. Pleasure to meet you, Angela. I was just telling Violet about an upcoming audition in New York. It could be a fantastic opportunity for her. I forced myself to smile, even as I felt my world tilting on its axis. That's wonderful, I managed. Violet squeezed my hand, her eyes shining with excitement. Isn't it amazing? It's next month, and if I get it, I could be joining the company for their winter season. I nodded mechanically, my mind racing. New York, next month. This was it, the beginning of the end. The rest of brunch passed in a blur. I smiled and nodded at all the right moments, but inside, I was crumbling. By the time we made it back to our room, I felt like I was going to burst. Violet, I said, as soon as the door closed behind us. We need to talk. She turned to me, her smile fading as she took in my expression. What's wrong? I took a deep breath, steeling myself for what I had to say. This weekend, it's been magical, but it's not real life. You have this amazing opportunity in New York and I can't hold you back. Violet's eyes widened in disbelief. Hold me back? Angela, what are you talking about? I'm talking about the fact that you're young and talented with your whole life ahead of you. And I'm just, me, a middle-aged seamstress with a failing business and more baggage than a luggage carousel. Tears welled up in Violet's eyes. Is that really what you think, that you're not good enough for me? I nodded, unable to meet her gaze. It's not about being good enough, it's about being realistic. You deserve someone who can give you the world, Violet, not someone who's struggling to keep her own world from falling apart. Violet stepped closer, cupping my face in her hands. But what if I don't want the world? What if I just want you? For a moment I let myself believe it could be that simple, but then reality came crashing back. You say that now, but what about in a year? 5 years? When you're touring the world with your dance company and I'm still here, hemming dresses and barely making rent. Violet opened her mouth to argue, but I held up a hand to stop her. Please, just think about it. Really think about what you want for your future. Because I can't be the reason you give up on your dreams. With that, I grabbed my suitcase and headed for the door, leaving a stunned Violet behind me. As I waited for the elevator, I could hear her calling my name, her voice breaking with emotion. It took every ounce of willpower I had not to turn back. The weeks following the wedding were a blur of sleepless nights and long, quiet days at the boutique. I threw myself into my work, desperately trying to forget the feel of Violet's lips on mine, the sound of her laughter echoing through my empty shop. Every time the bell above the door chimed, my heart would leap, hoping it was her. But it never was. I told myself it was for the best. Violet needed to focus on her career, on chasing her dreams. She didn't need an aging seamstress holding her back. But gosh, it hurt. One rainy afternoon, as I was closing up shop, my brother Marcus stopped by. He took one look at my face and sighed. "All right, sis," he said, pulling up a chair. "Spill it. What's got you looking like someone ran over your favorite sewing machine?" I tried to brush him off, but Marcus had always been able to see right through me. Before I knew it, I was pouring out the whole story. The fake relationship, the real feelings, and the heartbreaking decision to let Violet go. Marcus listened patiently, his brow furrowed in concern. When I finished, he let out a low whistle. "Angie," he said gently, "don't you think you're being a bit dramatic?" I bristled. "Dramatic? Marcus, I'm trying to do the right thing here." He held up his hands in surrender. I know, but have you considered that maybe, just maybe, you're making decisions for Violet that she should be making for herself?" His words hit me like a bucket of cold water. Had I been so caught up in my own insecurities that I'd robbed Violet of her agency? Before I could dwell on it further, my phone buzzed with a text. It was from Sarah, Violet's friend. "Turn on channel now." Confused, I flipped on the small TV I kept in the back of the shop. And there she was, Violet, radiant in a leotard, being interviewed about her upcoming audition for the American Ballet Theater. "This is such an incredible opportunity," Violet was saying, her green eyes sparkling with excitement. "But, none of it would have been possible without the support of someone very special to me." My breath caught in my throat as she continued. "Angela Edwards isn't just an incredible designer, she's the woman who taught me to believe in myself again. She showed me that it's never too late to chase your dreams, no matter your age or circumstances." Tears welled up in my eyes as Violet went on to describe how my resilience in the face of my struggling business had inspired her to keep pushing for her dance career. "So yeah," Violet concluded with a soft smile, "this audition isn't just for me, it's for us." As the interview ended, I sat there in stunned silence. Marcus squeezed my shoulder gently. "Still think you're holding her back?" he asked softly. I shook my head, unable to form words. How could I have been so blind? The next few days passed in a whirlwind. I tried calling Violet, but her phone went straight to voicemail. Her audition was coming up, and I knew she'd be in intense rehearsals. So, I did the only thing I could think of. I threw myself into creating the most beautiful dance costume I'd ever made. If I couldn't be there for Violet in person, I could at least make sure she looked like the star she was meant to be. The night before her audition, I stood outside her apartment building, heart pounding, the garment bag containing the costume clutched tightly in my hands. Just as I was working up the courage to buzz her apartment, the door swung open. And there she was. Violet froze, her eyes widening in surprise. "Angela, what are you doing here?" I took a deep breath, steeling myself. "I'm here to apologize, and to give you this." I held out the garment bag. Violet took it hesitantly, unzipping it to reveal the costume inside. Her gasp of delight sent a thrill through me. "Oh, Angela," she breathed, running her fingers over the delicate beadwork. "It's beautiful." "Just like you," I said softly. Violet's eyes snapped up to meet mine, filled with a mixture of hope and wariness. "Angela? I'm sorry," I blurted out. "I'm sorry for pushing you away, for making decisions for you. I was scared, Violet, scared of holding you back, of not being enough. But I realize now that I was just projecting my own insecurities onto you." Violet's expression softened. "Oh, Angie. I can't promise I won't mess up again," I continued, my voice shaking. "I'm still figuring this out, but if you'll have me, I'd like to try, really try. Because these past few weeks without you have been hell, and My words were cut off as Violet surged forward, capturing my lips in a searing kiss. I melted into her embrace, all my doubts and fears fading away in the warmth of her touch. When we finally broke apart, both breathless, Violet rested her forehead against mine. "You know," she said with a mischievous grin, "for a smart woman, you can be pretty dumb sometimes." I laughed, feeling lighter than I had in weeks. "Yeah, well, nobody's perfect." Violet's eyes sparkled as she pulled me into her apartment. Maybe not, but you're perfect for me. As we spent the night talking, laughing, and yes, kissing, I realized that love isn't about being the same age or having the same dreams. It's about supporting each other, growing together, and finding joy in the journey. And as I watched Violet twirl in her new costume, her face alight with excitement for tomorrow's audition, I knew that whatever came next, we'd face it together. Because sometimes, the most beautiful designs come from unexpected patterns. And Violet and I, we were creating a masterpiece. The morning of Violet's audition dawned bright and clear, a stark contrast to the storm of butterflies in my stomach. I'd insisted on driving her to the theater, partly to support her and partly because I was too nervous to sit still at home. "You're going to wear a hole in the floor if you keep pacing like that," Violet teased as she emerged from the bedroom, resplendent in the costume I'd made her. I stopped mid-stride, my breath catching in my throat. "Violet, you look incredible." She twirled, the beads catching the light and sending rainbows dancing across the walls. "Well, I have a pretty incredible designer to thank for that." As we drove to the theater, Violet's hand firmly clasped in mine. I couldn't help but marvel at how quickly life could change. Just a few days ago, I'd been wallowing in self-pity, convinced I'd lost the best thing that had ever happened to me. And now I was driving the woman I loved to what could be the biggest moment of her career. We arrived at the theater with time to spare. As Violet prepared to go inside, I pulled her close, pressing a soft kiss to her forehead. "Break a leg," I whispered. "Not literally, of course. We've had enough of that already." Violet laughed, the sound easing some of the tension in her shoulders. "I love you, you know that?" My heart soared. "I love you too. Now go show them what you're made of." As I watched her disappear into the building, I felt a mix of pride and anxiety swirling in my chest. Part of me wanted to sneak in and watch, but I knew Violet needed to do this on her own. So instead, I found myself wandering the streets near the theater, too keyed up to sit still. I window shopped, mentally critiquing the fashion displays and imagining how I might improve them. Anything to keep my mind off the audition happening just a few blocks away. After what felt like an eternity, my phone buzzed with a text from Violet. "It's over. Meet me at the cafe on 5th. My heart raced as I hurried to the cafe, a quaint little place with mismatched chairs and the smell of fresh-baked pastries. Violet was already there, sitting at a table in the corner, her face unreadable. "Well?" I asked, sliding into the seat across from her. "How did it go?" Violet took a deep breath, her eyes meeting mine. "It was intense. They really put me through my paces." I reached across the table, taking her hand in mine. "But you did your best, right? That's all that matters." She nodded, a small smile tugging at her lips. "I did. And you know what? No matter what happens, I'm proud of myself for even getting this far." Pride swelled in my chest. "You should be. You're amazing, Violet." We sat there for a while, sipping coffee and chatting about the audition. Violet described the routines she'd performed, the questions she'd been asked. With each word, I fell a little more in love with her passion and determination. As the afternoon wore on, Violet's phone buzzed. She glanced at it, her eyes widening. "It's them," she whispered, her hand trembling slightly as she held up the phone. "The American Ballet Theatre." I squeezed her hand encouragingly. "Answer it. Whatever happens, I'm here." Violet took a deep breath and answered the call. I watched as a range of emotions flitted across her face, nervousness, concentration, and then joy. "Yes, thank you so much," she exclaimed, her voice pitched higher than usual. "I look forward to it. Thank you again." As she hung up, I held my breath, hardly daring to hope. "Well?" Violet's face broke into a radiant smile. "I got it. They want me to join the company for their winter season." I leapt from my chair, pulling her into a tight embrace. "Oh my gosh, Violet, that's incredible." We stood there in the middle of the cafe, laughing and crying and not caring who saw. As the initial euphoria settled, a thought occurred to me. "Wait," I said, pulling back slightly to look at her. "The winter season, that means you'll be moving to New York, right?" Violet's smile faltered slightly. "Yeah, it does. But Angela, we can make it work." "I know we can." I nodded, pushing down the fear that threatened to rise. This was Violet's moment, and I wasn't about to let my insecurities dampen it. "Of course we can," I said, forcing a smile. "We'll figure it out." We spent the rest of the afternoon celebrating, First at the cafe and then at a nearby bar. As I watched Violet chat excitedly about her upcoming move, I couldn't help but feel a mix of pride and apprehension. That night, as we lay tangled together in my bed, Violet traced lazy patterns on my skin. "What are you thinking?" she murmured. I hesitated, not wanting to bring down the mood. But we'd promised honesty, hadn't we? "I'm thinking about how much I'm gonna miss you," I admitted softly. Violet propped herself up on an elbow, her green eyes serious in the dim light. "Angela, listen to me. This doesn't change anything between us. Yes, I'll be in New York, but that's just geography. My heart, that stays right here with you." I felt tears prick at my eyes. "But what if?" She silenced me with a gentle kiss. "No what ifs, we're in this together, remember? Besides," she added with a mischievous grin, "I hear New York has a pretty decent fashion scene. Maybe it's time for Angela Edwards Designs to expand." The idea hit me like a bolt of lightning. Could I really do it, move my business to New York? As if reading my thoughts, Violet continued. "Think about it. You've been talking about wanting to shake things up, right? This could be your chance." I let the idea roll around in my mind, feeling a spark of excitement ignite. "It would be a big risk," I mused. "The biggest risks often lead to the greatest rewards," Violet said, snuggling closer. "Just look at us." As we drifted off to sleep, my mind whirled with possibilities. New York, a fresh start, a chance to be with Violet and pursue my dreams at the same time. Maybe, just maybe, we could have it all. The weeks leading up to Violet's departure for New York were a whirlwind of emotions and preparations. We spent every spare moment together, savoring our time and making plans for the future. But as the day of her flight drew nearer, a heavy weight settled in my chest. The night before she was set to leave, we sat on the floor of my now empty boutique, surrounded by boxes and the ghosts of 1,000 dresses past. I'd made the decision to close up shop in Huntington Beach, but the reality of it was only just sinking in. "I can't believe this is really happening," I murmured, running my hand along the worn floorboards. 15 years of my life, all packed up in cardboard boxes. Violet leaned her head on my shoulder, her warmth a comforting presence. "Are you having second thoughts?" I shook my head, surprising myself with the certainty I felt. "No, actually, I'm scared out of my mind, but I'm excited too. It feels right, you know." She smiled, pressing a soft kiss to my cheek. "I know exactly what you mean." As we sat there, reminiscing about the past and dreaming about the future, a thought occurred to me. "Hey Vi, do you think we could make one last dress together, for old time's sake?" Violet's eyes lit up. "I thought you'd never ask." We spent the next few hours laughing and creating, our hands working in perfect sync as we pieced together a gown from scraps of fabric left over from past projects. It was a patchwork of memories, each piece telling a story of where we'd been and hinting at where we might go. As dawn broke, casting a soft glow through the shop windows, we stood back to admire our creation. It was far from perfect, asymmetrical and a bit rough around the edges, but it was ours. "It's beautiful," Violet whispered, her eyes shining with unshed tears. I wrapped my arm around her waist, pulling her close. "Just like us." Later that morning, as we stood at the airport departure gate, reality came crashing down. This was it. Violet was really leaving. "I'll call you as soon as I land," she promised, her voice thick with emotion. I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. We'd said our real goodbyes in private, but this public farewell was no less heart-wrenching. As Violet turned to go, I felt a sudden panic. "Wait," I called out, fumbling in my bag. I pulled out a small wrapped package. "I almost forgot. This is for you." Violet took the package, curiosity overtaking her sadness for a moment. She unwrapped it to reveal a delicate silk scarf, hand-painted with a pattern of intertwining threads. "It's beautiful," she breathed, running her fingers over the fabric. I smiled, blinking back tears. "I thought you could wear it for your first performance in New York. A little piece of home to take with you." Violet threw her arms around me, burying her face in my neck. "I love you so much," she whispered. "I love you too," I murmured, holding her tight. "Now go knock 'em dead in the Big Apple." As I watched her disappear through the security gate, I felt a mixture of pride, love, and an aching emptiness. But underneath it all was a current of excitement. This wasn't an ending, it was a new beginning. The next few weeks were a blur of packing, planning, and more than a few panic attacks. Moving across the country was no small feat, especially when you're trying to transport an entire business. Violet and I video chatted every night, sharing our days and offering support from afar. She regaled me with stories of her rehearsals and the bustling energy of New York, while I updated her on my progress with the move. I found a small storefront in the garment district. I told her one evening, barely containing my excitement, "It needs some work, but I think it could be perfect." Violet's face lit up on the screen. "That's amazing, Angie, I can't wait to see it." As the day of my own departure approached, I found myself standing in the empty shell of what had once been my life's work. The boutique looked so different without all the dresses and rolls of fabric, smaller, somehow. I ran my hand along the counter where I'd spent countless hours sketching designs and chatting with customers. So many memories lived in these walls. For a moment, doubt crept in. Was I really ready to leave it all behind? But then my phone buzzed with a text from Violet. "Can't wait to see you soon. New York's not the same without you." Just like that, my resolve strengthened. I wasn't leaving my life behind, I was expanding it, adding new threads to the tapestry of my story. The flight to New York was a mix of nerves and anticipation. As the plane touched down at JFK, my heart raced. This was it. No turning back now. I made my way through the crowded terminal, my eyes scanning the sea of faces for the one I longed to see. And then, there she was. Violet stood near the baggage claim, a handmade sign held high. "Welcome home, Angela." My heart swelled as I rushed towards her, all my doubts and fears melting away as she enveloped me in a tight embrace. "You're here," she whispered, her voice full of wonder. "You're really here." I pulled back just enough to look into her eyes, seeing my own joy and love reflected back at me. "I'm home," I said simply. As we made our way out of the airport and into the bustling streets of New York, hand in hand, I felt a sense of rightness settle over me. The city pulsed with energy and possibility, much like the woman beside me. "So," Violet said, a mischievous glint in her eye. "Ready to take New York by storm?" I laughed, feeling lighter than I had in weeks. "With you by my side, I'm ready for anything." And as we stepped out into the crisp autumn air, the city sprawling before us like a blank canvas, I knew that the best was yet to come. Our story was just beginning, and oh, what a beautiful design it would be. 1 year. That's how long it had been since I'd packed up my life in Huntington Beach and followed my heart to New York City. 1 year of late nights, early mornings, and more coffee than I cared to admit. 1 year of laughter, tears, and everything in between. And now, here I was, standing in front of a mirror in my newly renovated boutique, putting the finishing touches on the most important dress I'd ever created. "Angela?" Violet's voice called from the front of the shop. "Are you ready? The guests are starting to arrive." I took a deep breath, smoothing down the fabric of my dress. "Just a minute." As I stepped out into the main area of the shop, I couldn't help but marvel at how far we'd come. The once dilapidated storefront had been transformed into a chic, modern space that perfectly blended my classic style with Violet's contemporary flair. Violet stood by the door, greeting our guests. She looked stunning in a sleek, midnight blue jumpsuit that showed off her dancer's physique. When she spotted me, her face lit up with that smile that still made my heart skip a beat. "You look beautiful," she said, crossing the room to plant a soft kiss on my cheek. I blushed, still not entirely used to such open displays of affection. "So do you. Are you nervous?" She laughed, a sound that never failed to lift my spirits. "Terrified, but excited too." "You?" "Same," I admitted. "But we've got this, right?" Before she could respond, the bell above the door chimed. Sarah, our friend from the fateful wedding where this all began, walked in with her husband. "Oh my gosh, you guys," she squealed, pulling us both into a hug. "This place is amazing." As more guests arrived, friends from both our old and new lives, the boutique buzzed with excitement. I mingled, chatting about the upcoming fashion line, and Violet's latest performances with the American Ballet Theater. Finally, when the room was full, Violet clinked a glass to get everyone's attention. "Thank you all for coming," she began, her voice steady despite her earlier nerves. "A year ago, Angela and I took a leap of faith. We left behind everything we knew to chase our dreams, both professionally and personally." She paused, her eyes finding mine in the crowd. "It hasn't always been easy. There were times when we questioned whether we'd made the right choice. But standing here tonight, looking at all of you, and at this beautiful space we've created together, I know without a doubt that it was worth every moment of doubt and struggle. I felt tears prick at my eyes as Violet continued. Which is why tonight isn't just about launching Angela Edwards Designs in New York City. It's about celebrating love, partnership, and the courage to follow your heart, even when it leads you across the country. With that, she turned to me, pulling a small velvet box from her pocket. The room collectively gasped as she dropped to one knee. "Angela Edwards," she said, her voice wavering slightly. "You've been my partner in every sense of the word. In business, in life, and in love. Will you make it official and be my wife?" For a moment, I stood there in shock. This wasn't part of the plan. We were supposed to be announcing our business partnership, not this. But as I looked into Violet's eyes, shining with love and hope, I realized that this was exactly right. This was us. Unexpected, unconventional, and utterly perfect. "Yes," I breathed, barely audible over the pounding of my heart. Then louder, "Yes, of course, yes." The room erupted in cheers as Violet slipped the ring onto my finger, a delicate band with intertwining threads of gold and silver, just like the scarf I'd made her a year ago. As we embraced, surrounded by the love and support of our friends and family, I couldn't help but laugh at the irony of it all. We'd started this journey with a fake relationship, and now here we were, embarking on the realest commitment of all. The rest of the night was a blur of congratulations, champagne toasts, and stolen kisses. As the last of our guests trickled out, Violet and I found ourselves alone in the quiet of our boutique. "So," I said, a teasing lilt to my voice, "I guess we're really doing this, huh?" Violet pulled me close, her forehead resting against mine. "Cold feet already?" I shook my head, marveling at how right this felt. "Never. But I do have one condition." She raised an eyebrow, curiosity dancing in her eyes. "Oh? And what's that?" "I get to design our wedding dresses." Violet threw her head back in laughter, the sound echoing through the empty shop. I wouldn't have it any other way. As we stood there, wrapped in each other's arms in the space we'd built together, I felt a sense of completion I'd never known before. This boutique, this city, this woman, they were all threads in the grand tapestry of my life, woven together in a design more beautiful than anything I could have imagined. And as Violet leaned in for a kiss, sealing our newfound engagement, I knew that the best was yet to come. Because with her by my side, every day was a new adventure, a new design waiting to be created. Who would have thought that a fake relationship at a wedding would lead to this? Life, I realized, had a funny way of stitching together the most unexpected patterns into something truly extraordinary. And as we locked up the boutique and stepped out into the bustling New York night, hand in hand and hearts full of promise, I couldn't wait to see what design fate had in store for us next. After all, in love and in fashion, the most beautiful creations often come from the most unexpected combinations, and Violet and I, we were a masterpiece in the making.